Next up on the Bigger Than Food podcast.
I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor. And when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, the prognosis was not good. And so I really had to reflect on what am I going to be doing with the limited time that I have here left, right? And how do I have a lasting impact on my family? And how do I have a lasting impact on my community?
Ready? Yeah. All right, y'all. Welcome to another episode of the Bigger Than Food podcast. I'm your host, Apollo Woods. And I say this every week. You're going to hear this on the podcast. We're talking to another amazing person out in our community. Here on the Bigger Than Food podcast, we talk to people making an impact in their careers, their industry, their communities. And today's guest, Robert Ruiz, is, we'll get into it. But he's a rock star. I've learned so much for him, and I'll share some things that he's actually helped me with, him and his daughter, and helped me with my business. So, Robert, welcome to the Bigger Than Food podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Man, okay. So I like to start off asking people this question. Who is Robert?
Oh, man. It depends on who you ask, really. I've really been blessed to interact with so many different people in so many different areas. Yep. There are people who know me for my music. That's the predominant part of my life.
No. But who do you say you are?
Who do I say I am? Oh, man. I think I'm still trying to figure that out.
Okay.
Which I think is okay.
Yeah.
Too, I really am a person that, of course, loves my family, wants to see my family do well and succeed and thrive. Loves God, want to be present and attentive, and loves my community. I really want to be able to leave this world with knowing that I've had a lasting impact on my community. So I think that's who I am. Now, what I do within that realm has changed. I mean, it changes and it is still changing. So I've been grateful for all the opportunities I've had, but I wouldn't label myself as one particular thing, I guess.
Right. It's hard to talk about yourself, isn't
it? Yeah, for sure. I've been in marketing for a long time too, and so it's easy for me to talk about people. Right. It's easy for me to talk about the institutions that I've been attached to. I'm proud of those places.
Right. Because you have made impact in where you've gone, but why do you think it's difficult for us to talk about ourselves, especially the things that because the things that you do are reflective of who you are, and without your skills and experiences, those things don't happen. So that's why we talk more about who you are as a person, because that does come in the output. It comes out as what you do. Why is it difficult for us to talk about ourselves?
I have a theory on that. Actually, a long-ranging theory, and I've been working on it. But I think during many of our upbringings, we're taught to be humble.
Okay.
And so we don't develop this narrative or this story about who we are. We don't think of ourselves as a brand many times. Okay. Maybe I should speak more for myself, but we're taught to be humble, and that if we go anything above and beyond that, then somehow we're pretending to be too good or too good for our families or too good for our community or that sort of thing. And I think sometimes it's to our detriment because I may not have been very good at being able to say, this is my story. This is why I'm important. These are my successes. And so then it's hard for other people to understand that. Right. And so you end up being in this space, which I think is also comfortable, of continually serving, but maybe also not always being valued for who you really are.
But it's also just things like in anything competitive, whether sports or music, the audience expects for you to be the best. If you look at contact sports, they will criticize the athlete that doesn't hit the hardest, so they don't give the best effort, or doesn't show emotion, or is too calm, and whether it's football, whatever the thing is, right? But then when it comes down to things outside of sport, be competitive but be modest. Though they don't match.
Yeah.
So it creates this conflict of, man, I'm driven, I'm ambitious, I got these ideas, but when I do that, somebody else is uncomfortable and they're dictating what happens to me. So oftentimes I've noticed that, especially when you're talking about making an impact in your community, social impact, addressing systemic issues, addressing crises that are directly affecting your community, it is work hard, advocate for us, do for us, but do it in a way where it doesn't make people uncomfortable. Now let me stop right there.
Yeah.
Because I'm skipping a whole lot of parts before we talk about more about you. So you talked about you being a father and a follower of Christ. We met in Salt.
Yeah.
So where are you from? And how did that journey lead you to where you are to here?
So I was born and grew up in San Antonio.
Okay.
Being from Texas and you know, it's interesting. I mean, it's a very different place than Oklahoma, even though we're right next door.
Yeah. But are your parents from San Antonio as well?
Yeah, both my parents were born in San Antonio.
Okay.
My grandmothers, one was born in Yoakum, Texas, and one in Seguin, which are both right near San Antonio.
Yep.
My great grandmother was born in San Antonio, or you know, in the area, and so I have a long history in Texas. Sometimes I'll joke. I mean, I don't know for sure how long my line goes back in Texas, but I joke to say that we didn't cross the border crossed us, right? And so,
man, San Antonio is different now, man.
It has grown tremendously.
City.
And so
San Antonio and Austin are basically sister cities at this point.
Exactly, but San Antonio is also very different from all the major cities in Texas. I would say all the major cities in Texas are very different from each other, which was, I think, a blessing too, because San Antonio was different, I think, in many, many good ways. It was such a diverse city. Well, first of all, you know, Latinos or Hispanics were the majority, or still are the majority in Texas, in San Antonio. So I didn't grow up in a place where I was the minority, you know. Yet you still have some of those things like, you know, Texas history and that don't reflect necessarily our histories. And then, but you had communities of people, especially, I would say, attribute this is my theory. Yeah. But being a military town did a lot to bring people from all over.
There's many different backgrounds. 4 bases in San Antonio.
Yeah, there are 4 bases. There were 5. Okay. So I think it was 4 Air Force bases and 1 Army base.
Lackland's a big one, right?
Yeah. Lackland, Kelly, Randolph.
Randolph.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them. And growing up in neighborhoods, especially in middle class neighborhoods where you had many people from military backgrounds, you know, people just used to working together, working with people to accomplish a mission. And you know, what you add on to that, the rich history and culture in San Antonio, you know, being here and trying to build some of the things that exist in San Antonio really made me appreciate how much access I had to culture. Yeah. Because it was right there.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime. And, you know,
I believe that there's no Austin without San Antonio.
Yeah.
There's no Austin without San Antonio.
Yeah, I believe it.
So now you got North San Antonio, which is basically South Austin, or vice versa.
San Marcos is sandwiched there between. But it was a really wonderful place to grow up. I you know, we were born on the west side of San Antonio, that kind of the poorer part of the town, or poorest part of the town, and you know, we lived in mobile home parks for the first couple of houses that we were in, and then my dad, you know, my mom worked really hard and eventually moved up into middle class, and we got into some good schools, and you know, like I said, just very blessed. Put into a track for gifted and talented, and eventually became a National Merit Scholar. Okay. And so I'd also started playing mariachi music when I was 12 years old. So that was a big part. Involved a lot of sports, you know, football, track. I may not look like it now, but I used to be, you know, sprint relay and all that kind of stuff.
Let's put a pin on the music part, because music is a big part of your life, even now, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that when I first met you. I was like, what? And so wait, he does? So culturally, I understand. but not everybody picks up an instrument. And it's not just the instrument that what it means to music. So for you, what was it about wanting to be a part of the musical culture that prompted you to say, I want to do that?
I think probably the most influential person in my life was my uncle.
Okay.
You know, he played trumpet. He was a singer. He had his
I'm not going to ask you to sing.
Okay, I'm happy to.
I mean, look, we got a microphone, so we can make it happen.
No, but he had a group, a very popular group in San Antonio called Canela, and he just had this joy about him.
Okay.
He had this generosity also with my brother and myself, as far as wanting to teach us and wanting to show us how sound systems work and how just the music business worked.
Yeah.
And so he was an amazing influence on my life. I actually named my son after him.
Okay.
I was going to go the traditional route and name him, Robert Jr. But he meant that much in my life, and he unfortunately passed away a little bit before my son was born. So we were very honored to be able to, try to keep his name going.
Okay.
But he was the biggest influence. And then I had a great aunt who we would go every Saturday evening. We would go to her house. She had an art studio in the back of her house, and my brother and I would sketch and do different things. And then we'd go in the morning to play in our church. So we had a bilingual church.
So your uncle taught you how to play?
He taught us how to play, especially more my brother.
What instrument did you play? So you played trumpet.
So both my brother and I started on trumpet.
Okay.
And we both also wanted to be singers. And so joining the choir, we were able to explore that even more in a really safe environment. They had a mariachi style choir. And so my brother and I were able to play trumpet there and grow our skills and abilities and sing and do all those sorts of things and develop other stuff. We would write music sometimes and transcribe. But my brother was also a big influence on me. He preceded me in trumpet, and then he had a lot of success in band in school. I did not.
Okay.
I guess the structure of it, I guess, wasn't for me. Especially already having a little bit of a taste of professional music life, because starting at 12 years old, already playing around the city, can I think maybe grow a chip on somebody's shoulder.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest. So I didn't, band didn't go well for me. I was in band for about a year, and then 7th grade, I got out, but I continued music. Okay. My love for music didn't die. I continued to play with some of the mariachis in town, and then I started my own mariachi in my senior year in high school. Okay. Because our high school didn't have one.
So what's the significance of the mariachi band? Like, of course, I hear music and I see, and I probably label the wrong band, right? But just not knowing. But what's the significance of the mariachi band or music style to your community, to the Hispanic culture, to Mexican culture?
Huge. So in Mexico, mariachi music is actually named one of the national patrimonies. So it's and mariachi music is unique to Mexico.
Okay.
So as a country, it identifies with mariachi music. So there are many other genres within Mexico and Mexican regional and on the radio. You'll have bandas, which is more of a brass, what you might think of a German oompa band, but popularized. Norteña bands, which you would maybe consider more like a mix between country and rock.
Okay.
But mostly guitars, electric bass, drums. Whereas mariachi music is more of the chamber orchestra of Mexico, deeply rooted in folk traditions and rhythms, but also still extremely relevant in the popular music. Okay. So there are still young artists, popular artists, who are recording music that is on top 40 radio in mariachi. So mariachi not only has this strong tradition, but it connects generations as well. Okay. So we can go play somewhere and we can play music that for a quinceañera that the teenagers will relate to, but then also help their aunts and uncles, their grandparents, remember times in Mexico, remember loved ones. It's so ubiquitous that it's like the soundtrack of your life, right? If you're a music lover, you have times in which you're listening to different kinds of music as you progress, right? And then when you hear a piece of music that you were listening to on repeat 10 years ago, it takes you back to that time, right?
It's like blues.
Yeah.
It's like how blues connects to jazz and R&B. There's this, so what I hear you say that mariachi music, it's like the foundation of culture and music that has influenced other things, but it'll come back to the core of it here.
Yeah, I would go a step further to say that it's like blues, right, in the foundation, and jazz and R&B, and so it's like if you take all of those things and have one group that can do all of those genres, that's what the mariachi is. Because within the mariachi, you have so many subgenres. You have rancheras, which are like more of the country music. You have boleros, which are romantic ballads. You have the traditional songs that have, like I said, rhythms that are very unique to folkloric culture. The music that folkloric dancers would dance to, polkas. So you have all these cumbias. All these subgenres that represent such a wide berth of emotion, stories, tastes. You might have people that are not necessarily fans of rancheras, but they know that when the mariachi's there, then they're going to get a taste of what they like too.
So it's known. It's like if there's a mariachi band, it's going to appeal to different taste or musical preference of people in a space, which creates this large gathering and generational touches in one space.
Which is unique because
it is.
Because tying together generations is very important with the Hispanic community, especially here. And especially when you
here like in Oklahoma?
In Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And especially when you have generations who maybe have recently arrived from Mexico, because the acculturation and assimilation happens so fast that if you don't have those opportunities for children or for adolescents to share in those experiences with their parents or with their grandparents, then what happens is that there's this gap that gets created.
And humanly, you try to find places of acceptance. Which could create distance between you and the culture. So I was talking to a good friend of mine, and I made the comment. I was like, I was going through the South Side. I was on Southwestern, I think, and I was like, oh, I see like the carts, the food carts, or the trucks selling fruits, right? And I was like, that was interesting, because we were talking about the between the South Side and the East Side, and kind of what you mentioned. He said when people are coming to Oklahoma City from Mexico, they're able to identify with what they're familiar with. So to see a truck selling fruit or whatever they're on the side of the road, it gives them that sense of, in a strange place, that, I found some connection here. And so to hear you say that about music, there's all these different connection points that when you come to Oklahoma City specifically, you'll find a place to connect, which also means you'll probably find somebody to connect with if there's family, or they're like this family, or somebody you might be introduced to because you see the similarities and from your hometown or from your home country.
Well, and a lot of people are they're immigrating first of all to jobs. But usually they know about those jobs because family members have told them about it. So they're usually migrating to places where they already have some community, which is, amazing, right? Because you don't always have
so not necessarily a place that's unknown. They're usually going to a place of where it's known, where there is family, and can keep that culture and community bonds together.
Could you imagine if you're living in one of these countries and you're really looking for an opportunity to be able to provide for your family and to do something different because things are hard.
Right.
Thinking about going to someplace that's completely unknown, that, language is completely different, culture, values may be different. And our values I think are very similar actually. Here in Oklahoma compared to in Mexico. But you wouldn't know that by the political rhetoric. So could you imagine being one of those people? And especially if you didn't have somebody you knew here, because there had to be those pioneers too.
Oh yeah,
those people that made that leap, not knowing what their future might look like, but really just mostly thinking about the promise of United States.
Right. I want to kind of fast track and talk about some of the work that you've done. Because when I met you, you were executive director at the Citadel Community Development Corporation. And at that time, I only associated with the Cinco de Mayo Festival at that time.
That's okay, yeah.
But as I've gotten to know you, you have entrenched yourself into community building, economic development, policies, working to get the Mexican consulate here in Oklahoma City, that's a huge effort. And I haven't ever told you this, but watching you has helped me frame how I advocate for Black folks in Oklahoma. Because there wasn't really a model or person I feel like I connect and go to that I'm like, okay, this person gets it. Coming from San Antonio to Oklahoma City, being here for some period of time, but then where did it start from you deciding I'm going to be a part of advocating and influencing and changing processes that help my community here in Oklahoma City?
First, I want to say thank you for those words because it does mean a lot to me. That's big time, as I would say. But it came really early on.
Okay.
So I came here as a national scholar, so I had a scholarship to OU. I think at the time, and probably still some of that, but at the time there was a lot of feeling that Oklahoma was investing a lot in people that were coming from out of the state, that were giving basically, a full ride to.
What time frame? What year time frame was this?
That was late 90s.
Okay.
And so, but the fear was that okay, we're investing in all these people, but then they turn around and leave as soon as they graduate, so they're never actually contributing to Oklahoma.
Right. They're getting the resources and leaving.
So why aren't we, directing these resources to Oklahomans and trying to have more, homegrown? And so I was one of the few national scholars that stayed in Oklahoma, right? But very early on, so I had that a little bit ingrained in me. But very early on, I also saw, I don't know if I would say injustice, but there were definitely some things that didn't seem fair, or that people had just forgotten about. Because, Hispanic students at OU, and remember, when you move to, a university, that was my first time ever being, in a place like that. I was the first one in my family.
Too.
Yeah, first in my family to go. But, that's your world,
right?
Especially when you're living on campus and, you don't really go much outside of that. So thinking of in terms of, okay, who am I in this institution? Are there other people like me that can provide some support? So, becoming a part of the Hispanic Student Association, then learning about its history was important to me. Finding out that we had once had a space within the college called Casa Casa, and that they had a kitchen and people could make burritos and do fundraisers, and that had gone away. And I learned that there was a promise made to say, let us, give us a space, which was in the union, because we're going to turn around and build out some new space. But, students change.
Right.
Promises get forgotten.
Right.
And so then when I came around and found all this, then I went to go meet with the VP Nick Hathaway, with several people in the college, saying that, when are we going to get our space back? And, when are we going to be able to have a Hispanic cultural center here? We have a cultural center for African American students. We have a cultural center for our Native American students. So when can we build this back? So, like good administrators kind of redirected me and, started connecting me with Norman in a greater sense. And that was huge for me because then I almost immediately, as a very young person, I was involved in the visioning process for what the future of Norman might look like. You know, so just by being that squeaky wheel, I was trying to given some of these opportunities, and then talking about, okay, well, if we can't build a cultural center, then what can we do to give somebody those opportunities? So we started the first Hispanic Heritage celebration from the Norman Public Library system, because they're the ones that wanted to kind of really host it, and that went on for a number of years.
It sounds like what you were doing was try to recreate the community culture experience in the university environment where there are a lot of people, so that way they still feel connected, like they feel connected within the community.
Yeah.
Right. So you do feel lost and out of sorts when you can't identify landmarks, or you can't find a way to connect with other people. It's a large campus. You might be first generation. You might not be first generation, but it's still, people are still trying to always find a way to connect with their culture or people they identify with. So the fact that you saw that in the university environment, it makes sense, because that's what you'd already been a part of, living in San Antonio and now here in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and I think a lot of my efforts are really just to bring pieces of home here. You know, I still have a dream of starting a restaurant someday, because in my opinion, you know, San Antonio is the birthplace of Tex-Mex food.
Yeah, I remember one time I went to this corner store, and it was a corner store.
Yeah.
But there was a sign on it that said Buc-ee's. And I was like, there's no way there's a Buc-ee's in there. But it was the corner store. I forgot where it was, south of San Antonio. And it was Buc-ee's, but it was a homemade tortilla. And I swear to God, that was the best burrito I'd ever made, because it was authentic and homemade.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, man. I asked, just give me a dozen tortillas, and that's it, because it was amazing.
There's no place. I mean, we have really wonderful food culture here in Oklahoma. There's really wonderful places to eat, but there's no place that's like the food in San Antonio. So we have things that call itself Tex-Mex, but it really does fall short of my experience growing up, right? So I've always been thinking about, how do I bring that experience here? Of course, that's a big commitment, right? So
it is.
I'm working on other things,
especially we're the landlocked state and things can happen. But I also learned in Mexican food culture that regions are different. I mean, the assumption is you would think that flour tortillas are the origin of Mexico. It's not.
Yeah,
it's corn.
Yeah,
but why is it that? Well, you can understand why.
Yeah,
that things have been socially acceptable to make to push a flour tortilla, which is Spanish, versus the corn tortilla, which is Mexican. So all those interesting things.
It does depend on the region. You know, Chihuahua flour tortilla. San Antonio, of course, is highly flour. You know, and so huge history, right? So I think a lot of people from Mexico would, definitely would agree that the majority is corn tortilla,
right?
But the flour tortilla has its place. It's my favorite. I mean, just being growing up where I was. But there are very few places here in Oklahoma that actually make their own tortillas. Which if you go to San Antonio, every restaurant makes their own tortillas. I mean, it would be blasphemy to sell a store-bought tortilla, even though HEB is the bomb.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started, HEB. I love HEB.
Store-bought tortillas at HEB, and they are good. But regardless, I mean, just having that comfort. I love going back to visit, and I could go out to eat every meal. I don't eat any cereal at my parents' house.
Yeah, when they got, I think there's now an HEB in Dallas now.
Yeah.
In the Dallas area now. I was so excited. Living in Houston as long as I did. So then as you started seeing these things happening, and it sounds like your introduction to policy and advocacy started to take flight in undergrad. So then as you started to progress, at what point in this journey for you where you're like, you know what, I want to be that strong advocate and voice, because there are some injustices in process or systems that are negatively affecting your family, your culture, and community that are even coming here.
Absolutely.
Right? Yep. So can you recall when that moment in time for you was happening?
Oh, yeah. So, just a really quick development. My first business when I was here in Oklahoma was a software development firm, right? That's what I was studying, is computer science. So I had that technology background. It was amazing, made a lot of money, but it wasn't where my heart was, right? So we still needed that creative outlet. I still needed that connection to my community. But of course I need to make money at the same time.
Yep.
And so we started a Hispanic advertising firm.
Okay.
And had great success, great partnerships with many of the large agencies here, Ackerman McQueen, Staple Gun, VI. And then at the same time, we were growing our music company.
Okay.
And so in that, we were able to, manage many different groups and develop artists and record, and it was great. And then even start producing concerts and do some larger scale stuff.
Okay.
Then a new ownership group bought Crossroads Mall.
Okay.
Right. This was back in 2012.
Okay.
And so they approached me and said, "Look, we want to take this mall a Hispanic model route.
Okay.
And we know that you have tons of experience in culture and art and music."
Hold on, you're skipping over something. So this new ownership group for the mall,
Yeah.
reaches out to you. What were you doing to this ownership group identified you as the person they needed to connect with?
It was their banker. I mean, they of course it was a large development company. They've done a lot of real estate development here, and their banker happened to be Latino in Edmond, and he knew of all the work that I had been doing within the Hispanic community, within music, within marketing, and he was the first and only recommendation. It was like, if you want somebody that checks all these boxes, like, this is who you need to talk to, right? And so, of course, I'm an owner of an advertising agency, so I was like, okay, well, here's a contract proposal to do what you want us to do. And he's like, no, we need somebody to be here, right? So I had to make a really hard decision.
So they wanted you to join their team.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I had to make a really hard decision at the time. Of course, I was still very involved with the agency, but taking on another full-time job, was a big commitment, especially when I was at the mall, 70, 80 hours a week, sometimes even more, even almost every waking hour, because it was a heavy lift. When I got to Crossroads Mall, it was 17% occupied, and it was a ghost town. I mean, the traffic was almost nothing. Right.
Wow.
Almost all the nationals had left. It was so many vacant spaces. And so I had already come with a proposal of how we could start to build legacy events, signature events, all tying in with Hispanic culture, because by this time I had already built experience using these kinds of events for economic development.
Okay.
And I say that because my wife and I are also co-founders of the Norman Music Festival.
Oh, okay.
When we started the Norman Music Festival with a great group of people, same thing. Downtown Norman was the ghost town, right?
Yep.
There was nothing there.
And now it's like a signature destination event for Norman.
It's an arts district. It's tons of great food, great bars, museums, galleries, and that was all built as a result of the Norman Music Festival. There's no doubt.
You really found a way to leverage culture to attract people that, in turn, I call it culture enterprise.
Yeah.
You found a way to honor culture that brings people together, that exposes opportunities, that then in turn creates an economic value through bringing an emphasis to culture.
Yeah. Absolutely. And let me get into the nuts and bolts of Norman Music Festival a little bit, because I think it'll be beneficial to your listeners. Is that it's not enough to have an event, right? The event in and of itself, even though it could draw thousands of people, is not going to have an economic development unless you have some key features involved, right? Okay. So after we had the first year of Norman Music Festival, it was a great success. We had 15,000 people. We thought that was tremendous, right? But there were some, from my viewpoint, some really huge obstacles, because we didn't have any tools or vehicles to allow us to be able to take over and kind of own the right of way for the festival boundaries, to give us officially a physical address for that festival, to be able to then apply for an ABLE license and other permissions, insurance, all these other things. And so
it was like an open, free boundary space,
right,
with no identity.
Yeah, and basically the police were saying, well, we'll just treat it like a game day, right? Because game day, anything goes,
right,
on Campus Corner, and all this stuff. I was like, no, we don't want it to be like game day. We need things to be structured. We need to be able to tell people, that they can't bring things in, or they can't leave with
where
things.
to park, what to block off, barriers.
Yeah, exactly. Safety, trash, everything, because we have to have all of the interest of the property owners in mind.
Right.
And this is the thing, is that I think a lot of people that are involved with the arts sometimes lose that, it's arts for the art's sake, right? But arts can be a tremendous economic development tool.
Absolutely.
And so when you start keeping in mind the needs of the business owners, the needs of the people who want to start new businesses, and then in our case, once we were able to define an area to be able to say, okay, now we have a permit to do alcohol sales, let's say.
Okay.
Now we can use that to be able to allow the downtown restaurants and bars to partner with our festival to set up concessions outside of the restaurants, right? Because they're already going to get a boom from the traffic inside their restaurants, which we also incorporated.
But you're moving them from the outside to being inside of the space, so they're getting customer interactions on the inside of the space, which also can lead them to traffic. Hey, go to the restaurant or to the bar or place outside.
And we made their venues into stages, and so in any given music festival, we could have 15 to 22 stages where we're providing artists, and we're promoting the schedules. And so people are going into these places of business now and spending tons of money. And then they're also able to make money on the big outdoor stages.
Right.
And we're all collaborating. So we had at one time 11 different restaurants and bars manning 22 concession stands. And I built a system for everybody to share in that revenue.
Right.
So there was a donation back to the festival. They had additional income and impact, and for many of those restaurants and bars, that's their biggest weekend of the year.
Yep.
But it helped them to continue to grow, to continue to reinvest in their businesses, to build better stages, to build better infrastructure.
But then it's also this event becomes a place where they want to be a part of. So they want to be a partner because it's a huge deal, especially as the market has changed. And last year there was reported 40 restaurants closing in the downtown core. So anytime you have small business closing in Oklahoma, it's a huge blow to the market. Now, especially when you start talking about how do you create these opportunities for within, the Southside community,
right?
To increase entrepreneurs and business owners that are Hispanic or Mexican owned or Latino led businesses.
Yep.
Now they have an example of, I believe there's an opportunity for me to do this.
Yeah.
So with those experiences in your conversations with those entrepreneurs and business owners, did they start to realize that my restaurant or my retail shop is we're not just service providers, we're bringing this value to the community? How did those conversations change?
It was very different in the beginning because there were pushback from some business owners that said, we have so very few weekends in the year, and basically you're shutting down traffic to my store for that weekend so you can have your music festival, right? There wasn't, it took a little while for the realization to kick in. We're putting thousands of people in front of your business, and you can leverage that opportunity to create follow-up traffic. You can bring and promote to people to say, you might not be buying today, but you know what? If you come back next week, we're having a tremendous sale. Right. Or, we're giving out these free samples. So all of a sudden, people started changing their mindsets, changing their culture about leveraging this as an opportunity rather than seeing it as an obstacle. Right.
And I think that has been my experience. That's the part that's hard in Oklahoma City. Getting people to start doing things that are uncomfortable, but it makes good business sense. So that requires you to learn a new skill, so that way you can become a better business. Otherwise, when the market changes, the market doesn't care if you don't want to change. The market changes and traffic changes or developments change or people move, you have to be able to adjust.
Yeah.
And when they do, it works well, but it still requires a different skill.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to go to some policy things before our time runs out. But so when you started seeing these things in business and commerce and being involved in the educational system, given this experience, and being unapologetic about your Mexican heritage being out front, when did the getting involved in policy part start for you?
So when I was in the middle of redeveloping Crossroads Mall into Plaza Mayor, right? We really had to do, or I really had to do an assessment of what our community needed, because it was going to be more than a commercial center, right? Okay. So you're talking about more than food. I needed Crossroads Mall, Plaza Mayor to be more than a commercial center, right? It needed to be a cultural center.
Yeah.
It needed to be a community center.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of things that it needed to be that we were able to transform that into. You know, we went from 17% to 46% occupancy. The traffic went through the roof. Our nationals there, including like Victoria's Secrets, had hit sales records that they hadn't hit before.
Yeah.
You know, it was amazing. And then I had established many different events, including Fiestas Patrias, Cinco de Mayo, other at least monthly event, and then plus every week we'd have cultural events. Every Sunday it would be music and dancing and all these sorts of things. But during the assessment of bringing in, okay, we need a health clinic here, right? We need healthy food options. We need legal services. We need nonprofits. We need the consulate here, right? So we became a home for the consulate 2 weeks out of the month for several years.
So you have wraparound services.
Absolutely. But the biggest gap that I saw when I was looking at Southside Oklahoma City was in education.
Okay.
That's when I started actually getting my world opened up to, hey, there are other things out there than just like the traditional neighborhood school model, right? Brick and mortar model. Like there are other kinds of schools out there. There are people that are doing things differently, and that we might actually have an opportunity to bring a school to Plaza Mayor. And so that's when I started learning about charter schools and about how, they could be test beds of innovation. That they basically made a promise to exchange flexibility for accountability. So basically they have increased flexibility, but also increased accountability, So essentially
not just, hey, you're in class, just kind of just pass you through. Like, there's a reward for this, but if you want this reward, you're going to have to do these things.
Yeah, and it really depends on the models because they're all different, right?
Yeah.
But in Oklahoma, I would say more so than almost any other state, we have very high quality charter schools. And I started to see that there are schools where our students were having very, very poor outcomes. And then there were some outliers where our students were completely flipping the script.
Okay.
So I was, I thought, much like I think many people, that the biggest indicator for classroom success was poverty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But then starting to see these places where they were dealing with the same demographics of students, but then all of a sudden they were A+ schools, was amazing to me, right? And the opportunity that we could bring something like that there seemed like a no-brainer. So we were talking to Lighthouse Academy. We had talked to Santa Fe South, which we actually ended up selling a part of the building to Santa Fe South.
Okay. That's Chris, right?
Chris Booster. And I told the ownership group at the time, I was like, we need this here. Like, if we want to build this into a community, we need a school here. We need a grocery store too. But before that, this school can bring so many families and so much traffic to this building. and so much positive energy that we need to sell that anchor at the least amount possible. And so, and which I'm very grateful that the ownership group listened to that, and Santa Fe South is still thriving there to this day. So for me, that's like that's a piece of my lasting impact, right? So I was a part of that. I wasn't completely responsible. There's a lot of people,
but you were engaged in it, and I love what you're saying, because it's like you took due diligence and made a commitment to what are the root causes. I think oftentimes when you talk about community development, making a neighborhood better or a community better, people get to the very much of the leaves and the superficial things. That yes, they make you feel good for the moment, but if it's food, we'll do a bunch of giveaways, but they're still hungry there on that day. What's the root cause of this? And oftentimes it's education. It's being able to create an independent income for yourself. That then leads to having access to health care, that leads to other resources, that then people will naturally, in turn, when they see value, put it back into their community. And it recycles more and more and more. And honestly, I say kudos to you, because the South Side is doing that exceptionally well in comparison to what's happening in the Northeast. And it's a struggle trying to, I'm not from Oklahoma City. I'm born and raised in Duncan, but seeing those things are different, but it's also inspiring also to hear you talk about how you leveraged music and culture and food to get people together. And when getting them together, it led to, let's have a deeper conversation. And then you think about it, development happens in decades. 20 years later, everything happens in decades. Development happens in decades. It's not 3 or 4 or 5 years. It's going to be 10 years. 20 years. And now you have the chance to have a 30, 40, 50-year plan, going back to what you're saying, making people feel like they got a little bit of home here.
Absolutely.
I think that's brilliant, man. I think that's brilliant, and I wanted to bring you on the podcast to shed some light on that, because there's so much power in culture.
Oh, absolutely.
So much power in culture, food, and music. That's the core, in my opinion, what makes neighborhoods. But now you're taking it a step further. Now there's an economic impact of it, which now people pay attention to. Now they want to be a part of the money.
And now there's a social impact.
Absolutely.
It all can lead into one another, especially if you're intentional about the way it all connects. For me, learning about the needs and then learning about some of the potential solutions really changed my life, because at that point, that's when I decided to become fully invested in education. And so that's when I made the transition from real estate development to community development. Right. I was already doing a little bit in there, but made the transition into fully nonprofit, statewide community development. And that was a beautiful experience and beautiful journey. It has been and still continues to be. Working with communities in North Tulsa and rural Oklahoma, and of course Oklahoma City and Norman, to really address some of the issues. When I was doing my research, looking at Oklahoma City and the needs assessment, I found out that at the time, and probably still to this day, if you were born Hispanic or Latino in Oklahoma City, you were 6 times more likely to attend an F-rated school than if you were not Hispanic or Black.
Wow.
You likewise, if you were Hispanic, you were 6 times less likely to attend an A school. If you were Black in Oklahoma City, you're 11 times less likely to attend an A-rated school. And to me, those are the sorts of things, and not to discredit any causes for which people march on the street for. But that's what we should be out on the street about. That disparity is too large to ignore. Right. There are many people for whom the current system works for, but there are too many people for whom it does not work for us to ignore. And I'm really grateful to the many brave individuals who are working within the system and also working outside the system to try to change those outcomes. there's still so much work to be
There's
done.
always a lot of work to do. And I was talking to someone earlier, and we were talking about doing hard things well. And I find myself often in my prayers now is Lord, help me to do the hard things well. It's easy to talk about, well, we got to do some backpacks. We got to do bikes. Yes, we'll have a job fair.
Yeah.
People show up.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a job. Maybe there's not.
All right.
People show up. That little bit of confidence for the moment. But what's the root issue here? You know, we're not willing to get on our hands and knees and get shovels and do the hard work, get to the root cause of what is going on, then we're always going to miss it.
Yeah.
So you found education. Education's connection to poverty and to crime and to healthier living and to income and to sustainability. That's a lane that we have to be in. So now with that effort, that commitment to, I would say, like, you're like an ambassador, definitely a model of, let's get into the hard work of things. So when you're trying to decide how to navigate the politics of things in our, the structure of how our state is predominantly Republican and conservative, some of the issues that you face are probably not in favor of the dominant party and probably not in favor of the non-dominant party. Still got to social navigate. How have you been able to navigate the complexities of politics to get what your community, what you believe your community deserves?
Sometimes successfully and sometimes not as successfully.
But you're trying.
But so some of the principles that I follow, especially in dealing with policy and areas in which, you know, you may have to work with people that you don't agree with on other things, and or people that usually you would agree on for some reason are vehemently against what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So there are no permanent enemies, no permanent allies, only permanent interests, right? So I've always told, you know, the way I did my community development work was twofold, was through community organizing and grass top advocacy, right, at the Capitol, right, with lawmakers, with decision makers, and community organizing was really about developing leadership within communities, right, letting the community lead the way, and so I would always lead with those sorts of principles because it was important for them to understand not to burn bridges, like as they get into this advocacy work. Don't write people off. You may run into somebody who you know thought you hated, that the media told you to hate.
Right.
But in this particular issue, they're with you, and they will help you get this thing done. Right. And to understand that we're all human, that we're all brothers and sisters, and that many times it just takes building relationships. Right. And so that was another one of the key principles, is that relational power was the best kind of power for us to build to make change. Right. And so relational power is power with each other. Right. And through that we can do very powerful things. And we did. We started whole new schools. We built new educational models. We passed laws, changed laws, stopped laws. And really you laid the groundwork for some really transformative things. While at the same time, some of those things that we were able to build are now thriving. But not all the people were in agreement with.
Of course, you're not going to give complete agreement. But if you looking at what has happened, the success of what's happened, why do you, from your assessment, why do you think they were able to happen? What prompted that trust? What prompted that interest? Now, so here's the question. Why do you think people chose to follow you and the work that you've done?
I think because I didn't ask them to follow me, right? And really what I really wanted to do.
I'm smiling because I keep having this conversation and I'm like, somebody else gets it.
Because, you know, with the community organizing, what the principles that I tried to convey to people is that you have the power to solve these problems.
Yes.
I am not going to empower you, because by thinking that I can empower you, it's like I'm giving you something that I could take away.
Yep.
No, my job is to help you understand the nature of power, right? That power is simply the ability to act. You may have your own relationship with power, so we're going to explore that.
Yep.
Like, when have you felt powerful,
Yep.
and when have you felt powerless? And then to understand that power is neither bad or good; it's just how you use it.
Yeah.
Right. But that you are a powerful person. God endowed you with free will, with divinity, with a tremendous amount of power.
But with power, especially in leadership, it's your ability to move an audience. Not everybody has power. People do have influence, but you can maybe get them to think. But a person who's considered powerful can move an audience. And I love the fact that you said, I'm not here. I'm not here to convince you. This is the direction that I'm going. Either you're going or you're not. But when we're going together. And here's what's going. You're going to start seeing how hard it is. But then ultimately you become not afraid of the challenge, because you know, I didn't get this one, but I got that one. So the more confidence that you've built, it is, it's going to be a challenge. Yeah, it's going to be hard.
Absolutely.
But guess what? We're going to get something out of this that benefits our community.
Exactly. So as I would train other organizers, the main thing I would tell them is that don't sell anybody on anything. You don't convince anybody to do anything. Don't persuade anybody to do anything. This is not about that. This is about you learning who that person is, what their values are, what their principles are,
and where, if you can align.
Yeah, exactly. What problems they want to solve, if that aligns with other people you may know, and how do you get these people that have these interests aligned together and start building the tools for them to build discipline, to then be able to build relationships, so that way you can build accountability.
Right.
Without relationships, there is no accountability.
Right? And I think the believe part about the accountability is that after you built that, especially in the realm of politics, as you built that, and they know if they didn't do what y'all agreed to do, they understand there's this community of people who are going to hold you accountable, and the threat to that is losing a seat.
Yeah.
So if I want to maintain my seat, I have to listen to my constituents and the influencers of my constituents. I think that's his. I got 2 more questions.
Yeah.
I love this, and I'm getting really excited because I want to understand where that spirit came from. Where did that spirit come from?
I think selfishly, it's like it's all kind of related, and I'll just say this and be vulnerable, but I love the affirmation that I get from having that impact on people. Okay. Right? I think it comes from the same place as being an entertainer.
Okay.
Right? If you're doing a good job, like you're getting this positive feedback, and it all just like helps. If you feel like there's this reward. Right. The same thing in community development. I mean, when you're really trying to go after really hard problems, being able to work with people who have tremendous pain, and then see them have hope, see them have wins, and how it transforms their lives and the people that they care about. I mean, what bigger like positive feedback reward structure could exist for a person, right? So I'd like to say that it was all, just sacrificial and out of the kindness of my heart. It's not. I mean, I had tremendous benefit out of that. And I think that's okay. I think, that's how we all function, is that we do look to basically find some sort of purpose in order for us to have that reward. Right?
But I would challenge you on how you defined it. I don't think it's a selfish thing. I think it is you gave somebody a chance to see something different. It's like Hebrews 11:1. I'll always go back to that. Faith is the substance of things we've hoped for, and hope starts in how you think about a thing. You can't change the actions of a person or a group or an outcome if you don't believe that you can do it. Then we're starting at 2 different points. Yeah. But you're showing people, although it might be difficult, I want you to think about it differently. If you think it's possible and you think you can, how you walk it out in your faith, the result is the thing that you've been looking for. And we need more examples and more consistency in that. And I love, whether it's watching from afar, I can even see it, in Sonya and how she's doing her thing. So I'm like, I can see the fruits and the trees between what the work that you and your wife have done. Okay, I have any more questions, but the real question I really want to ask you as we close this out is why are you proud of yourself?
I think I am living the life that I wanted to live.
Okay.
And I feel very blessed in that, because I feel like there are a lot of people who are frustrated that are maybe don't feel like they're living the life they want to live. And so I'm grateful that I have this opportunity. I know that I can lose it at any moment. I know that things can change, but through direct experience,
Right.
I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor. And when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, the prognosis was not good.
Okay.
And so I really had to reflect on, what am I going to be doing with the limited time that I have here left?
Yeah.
Right. And how do I have a lasting impact on my family? And how do I have a lasting impact on my community? And I felt like I've lived every day since then, trying to listen, first of all, to the Holy Spirit about where I'm being guided.
Right.
Even though it may not be in spaces that I thought I would ever be.
Yeah.
Right. And then trying to do my most to serve others, but to do so effectively to where I am having an impact.
Right.
I think one thing that makes me proud of myself is my belief in the capacity of others.
Okay.
Right. I am an eternal optimist, but at the same time, I believe in people's ability to be successful.
Okay.
But I also understand that many times my responsibility then is to try to remove obstacles,
Okay.
to try to hopefully transfer some wisdom that I've gained a little bit in the life that I've lived. I mean, I feel I've lived a lot of life at this point. I have, of course, many things to learn. I'm not, by any means, there, but what little I do know and what things that have helped me be successful, or on the other end, help me avoid pain.
Right.
Like, how do I impart that on other people to maybe where they don't have to struggle as much, or they don't have to have the same kind of painful experiences or things like that. I think that's what makes me feel proud, because I don't always see that reflected. I see sometimes people that don't believe in people, that don't believe in communities. Or for me, what's even more tragic is when I see people inadvertently telling communities that they're not capable. Like that for me, like really drags me down and really frustrates me.
I have a really short temper when I experience that. And I am an expressive person, especially my facial expressions. But I've been in what has continually been challenging for me is, when I lived in Houston, and I always talk about Houston, but I got a chance to watch the third world community push back. And the University of Houston's address was once Calhoun. Well, where Martin Luther King hit the university, it changed to Calhoun. Now the university's address is Martin Luther King.
Okay.
That's a big deal for a university to have your university's address, main campus university, is the name of the street that it tried to remove, right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm around in some audiences and I hear people say that we can't afford this, in generalizations that we don't do this, or it can't happen, or it didn't happen in Oklahoma, that to me bothers me so much. Because essentially what you're saying as a person in leadership or influence, you're pouring into them that they are not good enough. You're pouring into them that your community will never be good enough, and you should accept what somebody offers you. That to me is not good leadership. That's not, especially being a follower of Christ, that's not what you've been called to do in a capacity of influence and leadership. So when I hear you talk about people telling you doing a good job, because you should be affirmed of the work you're doing because it's a sacrifice. When I hear you work relationally with people to get them to think about it on their own without you, now you have a larger impact that you can make because now people are thinking independently. Now Absolutely. They have pride. Now it goes back to how I see it. It goes back to music. It goes back to those gathering places of culture. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, now you got people to think about how great their community can be. And now you celebrate often through music, and generations are in a room, and there's conversation and connectivity. So, yeah, you got to be excited all about that stuff. I could go so many different places with all that, and you know what I really do have? I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
No, I just got one.
Okay.
Why would your wife be proud of you?
Oh, I think she is most proud of me because of all of the difficulties and struggles that we've been through, that I have stayed committed, that I have been her best friend, that when she needed it, I've been her advisor. Like, I shouldn't be her advisor when she doesn't need it. But an understanding when it's right.
Yeah.
And for the love and for the family that we've built together.
Yeah.
I think that's what she'll be most proud of me about. She is proud of the work that I've done in the community and those sorts of things. But I would say it wouldn't elevate past, what she feels about me as a husband and as a father. So
I asked that question because y'all are in this work together.
Oh, absolutely. We've worked together on so many different things.
I know.
She's just amazing.
So you're in this work together, and it's not always easy to deal with a man who has a purpose, right? But she has a purpose too, and y'all seem to gel together in that. And you can, I love to see, when I had a chance to see it, it come out through your kids.
Yeah.
And they're still involved and related to it. It's a normal thing to do. And how Sonia talks about certain stuff, I'm like, yeah, I see your dad, I see your mom and that. I love to see that. I think that just goes to your experiences in San Antonio and coming here.
Madia's she's built her own things too, and she's built up nonprofit programs and educational programs, and she helped get all of the vendor aspect of Norman Music Festival off the ground. Her and I were co-winners together of the Governor's Arts Award.
Nice, congratulations!
Thank you. Yeah, good. Just for all of her contributions too, and she definitely deserves to be celebrated in and of herself. But at the same time, she's been one of my biggest supporters. So
I think when 2 people come together and they both understand what their purpose is and how they can make communities better, but they also have a shared interest in doing it. I mean, together, I believe that we were born in this world to do things in community, not in isolation. And y'all found a way to do it. It's not always pretty in doing it, but you found a way to do it. And I hope you see the fruit of the work that you put in, from the seeds that you planted, and to keep going. So if somebody wants to support you or find you or figure out how they can be a part of all the work that you're doing, not just in the south of Oklahoma City, but around the state, how can they do that?
Well, first of all, definitely follow the work that we're doing at Oklahoma City Community College. Actually, my wife and I are both working there right now. I'm working in innovation and technology there, and she's working in academic affairs. And then just look for me on social media. I'm on X and Facebook and those other places. Every now and then, I'll promote something that may be happening or some need that may be out there. And so I'd love to just have people support in that sense. So
awesome.
Yeah,
Robert, I thank you for coming on to the Bigger Than Food podcast. And for those of you watching this, do us a favor, go to our YouTube channel where you'll be able to watch this in full on Bigger Than Food. I need you to turn on those notifications and subscriptions. It helps us grow our platform so we can continue sharing amazing stories like Robert and others that are here in Oklahoma City or even beyond. We have several guests outside of the city and the state as well. We thank y'all for your support. And like we always say, our mission is bigger than food. And today, make sure you are intentional in supporting a Mexican, Hispanic, Latino, woman-owned business today. Thank you for joining the Bigger Than Food podcast. We hope you found inspiration in stories shared today. Remember, it's the courage to take action that drives real change in the world. Be sure to subscribe to the Bigger Than Food podcast for more conversations with movers and shakers who are shaping our tomorrow. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing,